Greetings, adventure travelers and fellow keepers of the lake. How are you all doing? Welcome. Today we're gonna talk about a monster. A couple of them. Every time I do one of these, I will be choosing a random being, monster, entity from the Kult book and talking about it. The goal here is not to teach you just how to play Kult or like give you my way of running it in Kult, but to just talk about the thing and maybe you get inspiration to use it or run it in other games as well. So we're gonna keep it very system agnostic. I'm not gonna go over stat blocks or abilities or anything like that because at its core it is the vibe of the monster. It is what the monster does, how it looks, how it moves, and that is what is going to cause the most sincere reaction. As soon as you give it a stat block, the genre of the session might change, and that's fine, that is okay, that is how this all works. And your GMs, you can figure out how to port it to other systems. At one point, if there is enough demand, I might start porting it and making stat blocks, and maybe I put it on my Patreon, so we'll see. So to understand today's monsters, you need to understand the abyss. Deep beneath the surface of the world, we know lies something older, darker, far removed from the comforting lies of light and civilization. The Underworld is a layered abyss beneath the surface of all worlds, a network of caverns, tunnels, and impossible spaces. It isn't just beneath your feet, it's beneath the foundations of reality itself. Every step downwards strips away something, the warmth of light, the familiarity of sound, even the laws of physics.
The Underworld is entropy incarnate, a slow march towards the void.
So the idea is that people are living in this sort of like a matrix type of thing called the Elysium, and in some places the veil is thin between the Elysium and whatever is on the other side, and what is on the other side really depends on where you are in Elysium. If you want to know more about Elysium and the lore of Kult, I do have a video on that. It's quite an old video, I don't agree with everything I said there, but I think it's worth checking out. It really transfers the vibe I was going for and I felt while reading the Kult book. So to get to the Underworld, you need a place where the veil is thin and you need to be underground. The deeper you go, the more you get lost, the more you're sucked in to the Underworld itself. And the Underworld is divided into levels, so we will just go through the ones that this particular entity is inhabiting. And if you want to find out more about the Underworld, I will link to some resources in the description. So, the first level. It is when you're close to the surface. In this part of the Underworld, the sounds from the surface and the world above can still be heard. Subway trains rumble by, rainwater pours down, you can hear it going through the storm drains into the sewers, and the steam pipes groan and hiss as the city breathes. And quoting the original book, beneath these cities there is a warren of maddening passageways, utility corridors and tunnel systems, an entire population of runaway children, homeless people, lunatics, criminals, and drug addicts. They live in sub-basements of hospitals, in the subway's service tunnels, in forgotten bomb shelters, beyond the fires in old drums and naked light bulbs. This is a world of complete dusk and darkness. The ground is covered with cigarette butts, crushed glass and used needles, places that we avoid but are almost all too familiar with. Things that cause us to move our head to the other side, to forget. Places that even the city designers forgot they ever designed, and places that are well capable of making you disappear at night. So what happens when an urban explorer goes deeper, goes further down these tunnels? And what happens when they reach the depths, the second level of the Underworld? Well, at one point these narrow labyrinth passages descend into darkness. You can feel the cold gusts of wind that emanate from below. There are old sewer tunnels with stinking refuse reaching up to your knees, rusty pipes and metal staircases that lead even more into the deep. Neglected rusty panels hum on rugged cement walls, accompanied by the steady drip of water echoing in the darkness. Cockroaches, rats, and far worse creatures crawl around in the darkness. The last sound from the surface falls silent here, replaced by the sinister noises exclusive to the Underworld. But you're not afraid, not yet. You go ever deeper, reaching the Borderlands, or the third level. It's the threshold where the Underworld's true nature begins to show. Sewer tunnels give way to towering halls and yawning chasms, bridges lead over bottomless shafts, while the air becomes toxic from stone basins. It is a passage between worlds connecting to Metropolis, Inferno, and other places darker still. And these are things that are like the Underworld on the other side of the Veil, that are very close but distant, that wanderers like you can end up in on accident and maybe never find the way back. Or if you do, you're not gonna be coming back the same person. The Underworld goes deeper still, but we want to stay here, for this is where the beings we're interested in today live and hunt. We mentioned the Borderlands, and every part that is outside the Elysium has their own flavor of the Borderlands. And the book that goes into these Borderlands has just finished its Kickstarter, and we're expecting it soon, I hope. The Borderlands for me is where the best horror can be done. It is so subtle yet so eerie. Every Borderland having its own vibe, its own atmosphere. Oh my god, I am very excited for that. I will leave the links to those books in the description as well. So we start with the first being that dwells in the sewers. You might find that Cairaths are creatures living in the sewers and the catacombs just beneath the city's surface. They're grotesque, bloated, rotting abominations, stinking carcasses molded together with metal junk and trash. They do not devour their victims. Oh no, something much worse. They affix their squirming bodies to their own, and those unfortunate enough to be grafted onto these creatures can live for days, even weeks, undergoing this painful bonding process. Their wailing and pleas for help telegraph the creature's presence from a long distance, and these cries saved countless lives of cowards, as other explorers hearing these screams just run away, while the brave ones come to be consumed. Cairaths consciously influence their environment, and they can call people that are close to madness and put them under their spell. Some even worship them as gods. There are stories of madmen from small cults which capture stray animals, homeless people, and other outcasts and shackle them in areas they know a Cairath will hunt. But they are not just willing to doom others to this fate. The bravest of them all sacrifice themselves to the Cairath as well. The Cairaths are known to move very slowly, but their nightmarish appearance paralyzes most humans with overwhelming fear. Some would pull out a gun in these situations and try to shoot, but bullets do little to no damage to these creatures, and when they become close combatants, they tend to get crushed or swallowed by the monster. So these creatures, they grow, and at one point, when they reach their maturity, when they do become a Gransangthir, they become these massive leech-like creatures that live in the moist and slimy parts of the sewers. Their bodies are a mass of rancid fat, mold and rotting flesh. They are not individual beings anymore. They think with the voices of the thousands of victims. These victims regain consciousness and are still preserved in their bulk. In this form, these creatures are subservients to the Archons, and they serve them by standing guard over the Underworld, not letting any mortal pass deeper. Gransancthirs are not a physical threat, they cannot move, but their mental powers are very strong, and they create Zeloths, which are their minions that will give their life to protect their masters. Now this is where we delve into even more grotesque things. Zealots are people who were skinned alive and sacrificed to the Gransangthir. Screaming, they're drawn into this disgusting abomination's body, and through their suffering they're distorted enough to eventually become a newly formed zealot. They become these skinless creatures with no ability to speak. Their nails have been refashioned into crooked claws, and their long snake-like tongue enables them to draw nourishment from their victims. Fungal infections and molds sprout around their mouths, and these spores are highly toxic, even to the children of the Underworld. So now that we have covered the lore behind those creatures, I want to give a little inspiration of how I would use them. So first, I think the abilities, the mind abilities of these monsters can be very interesting to lure players into the underground, be it in a fantasy game or a modern horror game. They can start having these visions. They can see people going and disappearing into a subway that is under construction. Maybe they encounter multiple people that are trying to find their loved ones. Maybe one of the characters has a loved one who disappeared. And this is where I think it has the most impact, because if it was someone that the characters knew and they go and investigate, the first encounter with this being should clearly have a description of the person grafted onto this being. So now the characters should be asking a question: if I attack and injure this being, will I be able to save this person, or will it share the same fate as the monster? I would play around with different levels of attachment to this creature. Maybe someone just has an arm attached and is like being pulled by the monster, as if the transformation has not been completed yet, all the way to complete blob of human flesh. Now, if you want to take this further, you can have the being start running if it's bested by the players, or just look scared when the players approach and crawl into the pipe and disappear. These creatures do communicate by tapping on the pipes and listening for replies, so they might start hearing these tapping noises as the creature runs away into the pipe, and they might think the creature is scared, but what it's actually doing is it's alarming the Gransangthir and luring the Zeloths. So now you can have this stroll through the sewers, and as the players go deeper and deeper still, they would hear things around. They would hear the nails of Zeloths on the walls. They might see even scratches and like bodies that have been completely sucked from all life essence. So you build up atmosphere little by little with the Zealots. It would be interesting to see like one player is just lagging behind the party and they start to become attacked, and maybe even taken to be brought to the Gransangthir. Yes. And then the climax of the situation would be entering this hole after crossing bridges over endless bottomless pits and witnessing this overgrown mass of flesh that just dominates the players. Everyone who fails a certain check, whatever that could be in your game, might be dominated and start trying to feed the players to the being as well. This is just my idea. You can also keep it very distant and just play with the influences. You can have NPCs that have witnessed it try to tell people, maybe even go on like morning news and then just hijack the show and start talking about these creatures that live in the underground. Of course, police and everyone have done their research and they can't find the next level. They can only find the level of the subway, but there's nothing down there. There is no stairs that lead deeper into the underworld. And that's the thing with Borderlands and entering these spaces. Just at the right time, just as potential energy of emotion and human behavior reach the singularity, that's when you can pass to these places. If you're led by someone from the margins of society who knows the way, you can find it, but alone, you won't be of such luck. Or maybe that makes you lucky in the first place. Anyways, I couldn't really find more illustrations of these monsters, but feel free to improvise. Feel free to even like try and generate some of the images for this. The problem with these things is that you can't even generate them for reference because none of the AI algorithms think it's cool to describe something like this. I really think it is fascinating, especially for veterans of other games that don't know what to expect. A Mass of Flesh has pretty much been done before, but with these descriptions, and really pay close attention to the descriptions I used. Most of them are from the book, but that's what colors it into these colors of being eerie and like disgusting in a way. So use some of these descriptions and throw these grotesque monstrosities towards your players, see what happens. So if you have your own ideas of how you would utilize these creatures, or have your own disgusting monster or creature ideas, I would say leave them in the comments, but you know how YouTube is with these things, so I think it would be better to join our Discord server. We do have a creepy corner where these things are allowed. We're also making our own game. This is not the official book. This is just a placeholder, but we do have our own game that we're working on right now. We are documenting the process on Discord as well. It is very inspired by both Call of Cthulhu and Kult, but completely reinvented as its own system, and it is similar to neither in a way. So if that sounds fun, I will also link some videos that I already made on the topic in the description. So I hope we'll be seeing each other again in the next one, but until then, I bid you